Hello, everyone. Welcome to Behind the Numbers Around the World, an eMarketer podcast brought to you by Basis Technologies. It's Tuesday, December the 21st, and I'm your host, UK Principal Analyst Bill Fisher, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to Around the World with key regional trends. Welcome, folks, to a Behind the Numbers show that takes you around the world looking at what various countries are doing in the worlds of commerce, media, and advertising. Now, each month I usually ask a couple of our international experts to fill us in on what's happening in their markets, but we're doing things a little bit differently this month. It's the end of the year, so we're having a big party, a virtual party, I should add, and I've invited everybody onto today's episode to tell me in a speed round style what the key trends are for their regions in 2022. I'll be speaking to each of them in turn. They'll have 4 minutes each to tell me the lot. We're going to be covering a little bit of retail, a bit of media, a bit of advertising, a bit of big tech, a little bit of everything, really. But first of all, I want to introduce all my guests because whilst I've got them all in the room at once, I want to ask them a question. So first up, Karin von Abrams is our Principal Analyst for Western Europe. Hi, Karin.
Hi, Bill. Nice to be joining you.
Paul Briggs is our Principal Analyst for Canada. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Bill. It's great to be at this party.
We're going to have lots of fun. We also welcome Man-Chung Cheung, our Senior Researcher covering China and Asia Pacific. Hi, Man-Chung.
Hey, Bill. Hey, everybody. How are you?
And last but definitely not least, our Senior Analyst for Latin America, Matteo Ceurvels. Hi, Matteo.
Hey, Bill. Great to be here.
Great to have you all with me. So whilst I do have all of you in the virtual room, we got a little fastest finger first kind of affair. I have a Britishism for you all. I couldn't end the year without one, and I knew you all wanted one, so I'm going to give you one. I've got a word, a British word. If you think you know what it means, wave, give me a thumbs up or something, and I will put you on the spot to explain. And because you have an advantage, Karin, because you live in the UK, I'm going to give the others a few seconds head start. Nod if you understand. We're all good with that? Sound good? Yep. Okay. So, today's word is Beano. B-E-A-N-O. Beano. Any ideas? Oh, Matteo's put his hand up, I think. Go on.
Something with like a celebration, like a party-ish.
Can we all give him a round of applause? Well done.
Yeah.
It is indeed. You knew that, Karin, right?
I didn't. I was going to say that makes it like a bean feast, right? Is it short for bean feast?
Oh, this is incredible. Right, let me go through it. This is indeed a celebration or a party. First used in the late 1700s, it was a shortened word for a beanfest. So really close, Karin. This was a large celebratory dinner that employers would throw for their employees. There were indeed broad beans usually included in the feast, but it also included other delicacies of the time, such as cucumber. Funnily enough, people were obviously easily pleased back then. It's also the name of a children's comic book in the UK. It's the longest running weekly comic in the world, in fact, having been first published on July the 30th, 1938. And each year they publish a Beano book in time for Christmas, and I still receive one to this day. It was a family tradition every year. My collection dates back into the early 1980s. I hope they'll be worth something in future, and I'll be able to sell them all and have myself a big Beano of my own. Anyway, let's get on with some key trends, shall we? I'm going to speak with each of my guests in turn. And as I mentioned, they have 4 minutes to tell me what to expect for their region in 2022. First up, we're going to talk with Karin about supply chain issues, I believe. But before we start the timer, I just want to talk very briefly about the UK and the effects that Brexit is having on cross-border buying and selling in the UK. Essentially, the effect is negative. Our own cross-border buyer numbers for the UK are declining. In 2020, nearly 41% of the UK population had made at least one cross-border purchase in the year. That's going to be down to 37.5% this year. It's going to drop a further percentage point next year. Why are people buying less from abroad? It's costing more and it's taking more time, essentially. Brexit brought with it many more border checks and much more red tape. And consequently, it's taking goods longer to get into the UK, and the costs involved at the border are being passed on to consumers. And it works the other way as well, with UK businesses finding it much more challenging to sell abroad, certainly into the EU for all the same reasons. So, Karin, let's take a look at what's happening in Western Europe on this front. The timer is set. You have 4 minutes. Let's talk. What do you have to say?
Right. Thank you. Bill, you were pointing out the issues that increasingly affect cross-border e-commerce between the UK and the EU. Obviously, Brexit is a major cause of these problems, but that is being compounded by supply chain disruption. I'd just like to add a few more details on that in the UK in particular, to put the cross-border buying picture into a larger context and indicate how these factors are interwoven. For one thing, it looks as though the UK's supply chain problems may be around for a while. Not long ago, the UK's biggest port operator warned that the crisis might go on until 2023. Apparently, it's now currently taking about 10 days before a cargo at one of the channel ports can be unloaded. It used to be less than half that. As a result, some container shipping firms are now landing goods for the UK and EU ports, obviously a massively inefficient thing. Secondly, supply chain issues are hitting vital sectors across the UK economy, not just the ones we might immediately think of. The grocery sector, for example, about 2 weeks ago, a coalition of industry groups warned that the supply chain crisis needs an urgent fix just to ensure food security in the UK. That's partly because of concerns like the shortages of workers, seasonal fruit and vegetable pickers, staff in abattoirs, drivers who move all these goods around. Inflation is up. Expected to rise further in 2022. It hit 5.1% in November. That's driving up the price of everything. So all in all, the UK is arguably among the countries worst affected by these supply chain woes after Brexit, and it may see the worst impact in the short and medium term. But of course, these issues are certainly felt across the rest of Europe as well. In France, a survey by the Bank of France in Q3 found that half of French construction firms and 44% of industrial firms polled were facing supply problems. Among car makers, that share was close to 70%. It's harder and more expensive than ever to get both raw materials and products from outside Europe, although things are moving pretty well inside the EU. One CEO of a French manufacturing firm said that his own firm currently had 23 separate task forces tackling various specific sourcing problems. Normally, they would have one or two.
If I could just interrupt. So obviously, you spoke about the UK, and that was COVID obviously has an impact, but Brexit is possibly the biggest impact. In Europe, is it all COVID related, or are there other things that are causing these issues with supply chains?
It's not all COVID related, but as I was indicating earlier, a great deal is sort of interwoven. Certainly inside the EU, as I was saying, transport is quite good, but everything is being slowed by slow manufacturing. We know about the chip shortage and things like that. So it's a whole lot of things coming together to make a perfect storm, unfortunately. And I'm just going to mention a couple of other complicating factors. Even before the pandemic, there were moves afoot to tighten controls and improve the integrity of supply chains. A number of countries, the UK, France, and Germany, have either passed or about to pass some laws about performing due diligence on supply chains. Of course, those efforts, which haven't yet spread across Europe in a comprehensive, standardized way, are running straight into pandemic problems and other issues. And I just like to call out two aspects of supply chain disruption to keep an eye on. One is the breadth of the impact. As I said, it's affecting just about every sector of the economy in every country. Secondly, very importantly, consequences for brands. In the UK, an Oracle survey showed that 85% of UK shoppers under 35 said they would switch labels instead of waiting for products to arrive if they couldn't get what they had originally wanted. So if need begins to outweigh brand considerations, that's a very alarming shift for marketers to have to deal with.
Great. Karin, it's almost as if you had a timer in front of you. You've timed that almost to perfection. Well done. Karin, I'm now going to let you go. Thank you very much for your input.
Thank you, Bill, and happy holidays to everyone.
Great to hear about all that. Next up, I am going to talk with Paul Briggs about Canada. I believe you're going to talk about some developing ad channels in Canada. Again, if I just give a quick UK slant on this, we've got plenty going on in the video advertising space, for example, particularly across the development of connected TV, CTV, and the way people are consuming video. The distinction between digital and traditional is becoming increasingly blurry. But this is quite exciting for advertisers. It means essentially increasing potential. We published for the first time this year our own broadcaster video on demand ad spending forecasts for the UK. and the numbers were incredibly positive for the broadcasters. 26% growth in that measure this year. That's expected to be followed by a further 12% growth in 2022. So exciting opportunities in the UK video advertising space. Paul, I know you have plenty to say on this area, as well as a few others in Canada. We have reset the timer. You have 4 minutes. Let's talk.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, you mentioned that it was the first time that we forecast that type of video ad spending in the UK last year, and the same is true in Canada. So we had a connected TV forecast for the first time for ad spending, and it showed very much similar results to what you mentioned for the UK. So CTV ad spending will shoot past $900 million Canadian dollars in 2022, which will be up 29% from 2021. And we saw even tremendous growth in 2021 compared to the year previous. It was up over 50% last year. So this is a very hot advertising market. It has a long way to go to compete with some of the other more established digital advertising markets, but lots of growth in this particular area. We looked at these numbers because we were looking at trends for Canada in 2022 and what really caught our eye. And as we looked deep into a variety of subjects, the creativity that's being shown by publishers and advertisers is quite unique at this point in time. And a lot of it has to do with Apple's privacy changes and in the whole deprecation of cookies generally. So we're starting to see some really interesting and unique approaches to engaging audiences in Canada.
Okay, so that's video and a little bit more. You wanted to talk a little bit about digital audio as well?
Yeah, so that's another great example. So the IAB Canada has some reporting that shows digital audio is only 1% of digital advertising in Canada. And that was based on 2020 analysis that they performed. So it's still a very small slice of the pie, but we expect it to grow tremendously next year. For one thing, Spotify is one player that is expanding their operations, growing sales teams, and really creating ad products that meet a larger digital audio audience. The other thing to mention here is podcast networks. Another effective way to reach people across podcast niches is through these podcast networks, and ad products in that space as well have really developed and matured.
Okay, and there's one other area that you want to talk about as well, and you know, these are all familiar to, I imagine, lots of people around the world. They certainly are to me in the UK for video and audio. But an interesting one that again is relevant to the UK is developing media with regards to food delivery apps and their promotion. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think all of us can relate to the fact that over the past couple of years, the ability to order food from restaurants to the home has become a very popular way to get your meals. So an ad market has developed within these apps, sort of like a retail media model where you can promote offers in these apps and target new audiences as well. So for example, 7-Eleven in Canada is using paid promotion in a variety of apps to promote their convenience items for home delivery. So that's one example. The other thing that is related to this is online grocery. So online grocery exploded during the pandemic. About 20% of Canadians report that they do online grocery now at least once a month. So it's a big area. Instacart is making waves. They've got partnerships with a multitude of grocery retailers in this country, and they now reach a potential of 90% of Canadian households. So these apps are becoming more commonly used and are really presenting new opportunities for paid promotion.
Interesting and remarkable, Paul. We've pretty much used up 4 minutes exactly. Well done.
Awesome.
Thanks very much, Paul, for your time today.
Thanks, Bill. This was fun. Thank you.
Okay, before I welcome my next speaker for their speed round, we're going to hear from our sponsor. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Today's podcast is made possible by Basis Technologies. Basis Technologies has created a digital advertising platform that connects people, automates processes, and unifies channels, bringing together programmatic, site direct, search, social, and CTV into one single interface. And through the power of automation, Basis enables brands, agencies, and publishers to build and operate a healthy, secure, efficient, and profitable advertising organization. Ready to take control of your advertising? Go to basis.net today. That's www.basis.net. Basis Technologies, the future of advertising has arrived.
Welcome back. And next to give us his trends is Man-Chung. We're going to talk about tech stability following a rocky 2021. Of course, the big tech players in the UK haven't had it easy of late. There's lots going on in terms of legislation, privacy rulings. There have been a number of fines for the big players in the UK, but China is an entirely different beast altogether. Man-Chung, I'm excited to hear what you have to say about China and Asia Pacific. It's always really interesting coming from the UK. Your 4 minutes is now on the clock. What have you got to say?
Yeah, so it turns out that, I guess, tech regulators in China were having a bit of a Beano of their own in 2021. And so in order to get into next year, I think we need to rewind a little bit and talk about 2021, which was an extraordinarily tough year for China's tech giants because just simply the slews of regulatory scrutiny directed against them. The scope and breadth of the new regulations were simply profound and mind-blowing. Within such a short time span, there are no other ways to describe what we saw. So let me just give the audience a little bit of a refresher. In 2021, we saw the introduction of China's Personal Information Protection Law. Some argue it's more exhaustive than Europe's GDPR, which gave Chinese internet users more control of their personal data. Number 2, the debut of the country's digital security law. Number 3, revamped anti-monopoly measures, which led to huge fines on companies like Alibaba and the scrapping of several blockbuster and exclusive content distribution deals. Number 4, the banning of dubious e-commerce tactics, including discriminatory pricing and forced exclusivity. Number 5, crackdown on edtech, which was at the time one of the fastest growing sectors. Number 7, the mandate to improve benefits and working conditions for gig workers. Number 7, restrictions on weekly digital gaming time spent for minors 14 and under to just 3 hours per week. Number 8, the dismantling of walled garden built by the tech heavyweights. Before this, internet companies commonly blocked each other's services and links. Number 9, the proposal of new online advertising rules banning overly invasive ads as well as ads for certain product categories targeting minors. I'm getting exhausted here. Number 10, the rollout of the common prosperity ideology, an abstract concept to begin with, which calls on tech companies to contribute their fair share toward the betterments of society, like helping close the income gap. And not to mention the banning of cryptocurrency mining, online flaunting of wealth, and the crackdown on fintech firms' overzealous and obscure lending practices.
Wow, that's an awful lot. Points for the most number of trends in 4 minutes, and also a bonus point for getting Beano in there as well. Well done. So obviously a lot happening in 2021. What can we expect this coming year?
Yeah, so I would argue that in the long run, all these new regulations are ultimately good for society and the health of China's digital ecosystem. In the US, we often talk about tackling income inequality, excessive market power concentrated in the hands of just a handful of companies, video game addictions, etc., but we haven't really done anything major about them. So that takes us to 2022, right? So I think the toughest part of tech crackdown in China is over. After the tumultuous 2021, I expect more stability for China's tech heavyweights in this coming year. At the end of Beijing's annual economic work conference ended last Friday, Chinese leaders said they would like to emphasize stable growth and stable macroeconomic policies. And online privacy is still a fairly new concept in China, but young people these days are keenly aware of their rights. The introduction of the Personal Information Privacy Law was perhaps a watershed moment. I think the new regulations related to digital privacy and advertising will create an opening to shine for transparent and consumer-centric companies that truly care about consumers' privacy and the user experience. In 2022, we will certainly see fewer annoying ads and an improved and more seamless online user experience.
Wow. You said you got exhausted. I'm exhausted listening to all that. That was incredible, Man-Chung. Thanks for sharing more than I could imagine could fit into, again, perfectly 4 minutes. Well done. Thank you, Man-Chung. I'll let you leave now before we get on to our last guest.
Hey, it was a great 2021. All the best 2022.
Okay, finally, I'm joined by Matteo, and I'm really excited to hear about retail media in Latin America. Again, this is an area that's going to be important or increasingly important in a number of regions next year, I think. In the UK, we're definitely starting to see the duopoly just looking over their shoulder as ad spending in retail channels, and particularly on Amazon, you're seeing a bit of a surge. And of course, they've got all that great first-party data, which is becoming increasingly important. Matteo, 4 minutes on the clock for you. What have you got on Latin America?
All right, let's do this. So this year definitely built upon the momentum of many newly formed habits in the region, and 2022 is just going to be a further continuation of that. So within retail media specifically, I call it a perfect storm of factors. You have rapid and continued growth within the digital advertising sector, coupled with extremely rapid and strong double-digit growth in retail e-commerce sales. So this conflation of factors, and it's really a perfect storm to have retail media really disrupt the region's booming digital advertising industry. Now, the region's embrace of e-commerce is definitely raising the value of retail media among ad buyers, and this is because we're starting to see, as in other parts of the world, changing search patterns among consumers. So rather than going directly to Google, many are now beginning their search or research process for products and information directly on these e-commerce platforms, be it Amazon, Mercado Libre, Magazine Luiza, etc. So now, and in response, many of these retailers are looking at this and eyeing the opportunity to say, okay, let's now monetize this and create new revenue streams and opportunities to give a better consumer experience to customers by serving them relevant products that they're looking for, and serve other brands selling on the platform an opportunity to reach these consumers while they're in the ideal state to buy something. So now, as you alluded, first party is extremely crucial to targeting audience and driving sales. So as we all well know, third-party cookies have been a cornerstone of digital marketers' online efforts for a number of years, but with their imminent demise on the horizon, this underscores the importance of first-party data even more so. So marketplaces in the region, like Mercado Libre, Amazon, and Magazine Luiza, along with other retailers who have a really strong base of first-party data, are, in my opinion, extremely well positioned to offer ad targeting to marketers and really ultimately drive sales across the funnel. Now, similarly, as e-commerce sales are growing, retail media is definitely also going to benefit from the increase in digital ad spending. So next year, we're forecasting that digital ad spending in Latin America is going to grow by about 15% to about $12.5 billion. And the more important milestone of that is it's going to reach nearly half, or digital ad spending will account for nearly half of all the total media ad spending next year. So retail media is really going to see this halo effect and increased ad buys as a result. And then also, similarly, as you alluded earlier on in the intro, retail media networks are also going to allow brands to diversify their ad spending. So, Google and Facebook are very important channels and ways in which advertisers target consumers, but having a new option now with retail media networks is going to allow brands to diversify. You're not going to be wed to solely these two platforms. You have new channels to engage and increase conversions along the buyer journey. So now, what are we expecting for the year ahead? This is something we're going to follow very closely, but as the region's most prominent retail e-commerce players ramp up their first-party operations and capabilities, we should expect to see more budgets directed toward these platforms in the near term. And then over the long term, we're expecting that brands' investments on retail media networks will rival those on the duopolies. So who's going to stand best to win and win out from this shift in advertising behavior? Mercado Libre will stand to benefit most regionally, while other players like Americanas, SA, Magazine Luiza are poised to become formidable players in the Brazilian market. Now, we can't forget about Amazon, and we are expecting Amazon will also be a formidable player in both Brazil and Mexico. So while still nascent, there is plenty of opportunity on the horizon.
Matteo, thank you very much. That was absolutely fantastic.
Thanks, Bill. Always a pleasure. Happy holidays.
That's 4 for 4 in 4. Fantastic. Right, that's all we have time for today on Around the World. That was a whirlwind. Thanks to my guests, Karin, Paul, Man-Chung, and Matteo. We had a beano. We hope you can manage to have a few over the Christmas break. Tune in tomorrow for the second episode of our brand new bi-weekly show, Behind the Numbers Reimagining Retail, with your hosts, principal analysts, Susie David Carnian and Andrew Lipsman. Thanks to all of you for listening and for listening all through the year. I hope to see you all next month in 2022, no less, for another episode of Behind the Numbers Around the World. an eMarketer podcast made possible by Basis Technologies. Bye for now.